3H Guided Sleep Meditation. Fall asleep in the wish fulfilled. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a sacred moment of stillness where the noise of the day fades away and the deeper power within you begins to rise. You have arrived here not by accident, but by alignment. In this space, there is nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to chase, and nothing you need to force. Tonight is about rest, surrender, and quiet knowing. As you prepare to sleep, you are stepping into the most creative state of your mind, the state where change happens effortlessly. This guided sleep meditation is designed to lead you gently into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now. Before sleep closes your eyes, you will be invited to rest in the awareness that what you desire has already been accomplished. There is no strain here, no visualization you must hold tightly, no affirmations you must repeat perfectly. The power lies in relaxation, in allowing yourself to feel safe enough to let go. As the body relaxes, the mind naturally softens, and when the mind softens, the subconscious opens. This is the doorway where transformation occurs. In the moments just before sleep, the analytical mind loosens its grip, and the deeper intelligence within you becomes receptive. This is where assumptions are planted, where old limitations dissolve, and where new realities quietly take root. Tonight, you will not struggle to believe. You will simply rest in acceptance. You may have spent much of your life striving, trying harder, waiting longer, and hoping things will change. But here, in this gentle transition into sleep, you are reminded of a profound truth: creation does not respond to effort, it responds to state. When you fall asleep feeling fulfilled, life has no choice but to reflect that fulfillment back to you. Sleep becomes the bridge between imagination and experience, between desire and realization. Throughout this meditation, you will be guided into a sense of completion, a calm certainty, a quiet relief that whispers, "It is done." As you drift deeper, your nervous system unwinds, your breath slows, and your thoughts become softer and more spacious. There is no urgency anymore. The future no longer needs to be chased because it is already secured in consciousness. Allow these moments to be gentle. If thoughts arise, let them pass like clouds in a wide night sky. If sleep comes quickly, let it come. If awareness lingers, let it linger peacefully. Every state is perfect. Your only role is to receive. The subconscious mind will take what is offered and continue the work while you rest. Tonight, you are not hoping for change, you are resting in fulfillment. You are not waiting for proof, you are becoming the proof. As you surrender into sleep, know this: the feeling you fall asleep in is the reality you awaken into. And tonight you fall asleep knowing your wish is already fulfilled. The first and most important shift that must occur for any desire to be realized is the movement from wanting into being. The state of the wish fulfilled is not a technique, it is a position of consciousness. It is the inner decision that what you once sought is now accepted as fact within you. When this state is entered sincerely, the outer world has no option but to reorganize itself accordingly. Sleep is the most natural gateway into this state because it dissolves effort, quiets resistance, and removes the need to control outcomes. To enter the state of the wish fulfilled, you must understand that imagination is not fantasy. It is creative reality. What you consistently accept as true within yourself becomes the blueprint for what appears in your life. When you lie down to sleep, the senses begin to withdraw from the outer world. The body relaxes, the breath deepens, and the critical mind loosens its grip. This is not a passive moment, it is a powerful one. It is here, in this drowsy threshold, that assumptions are impressed most deeply. The mistake many make is trying to force belief. They strain to visualize, repeat affirmations aggressively, or convince themselves emotionally. But the wish fulfilled does not require force. It requires consent. It is the gentle acceptance that says, "This is already mine," without needing evidence. Just as you do not argue with yourself about facts you already accept, you do not struggle when something feels settled within you. The state of fulfillment is quiet, calm, and natural. When you enter this state before sleep, you are not asking life to give you something. You are agreeing with life about who you already are. The subconscious mind responds to identity, not desire. If you see yourself as someone who is still waiting, life continues to give you reasons to wait. If you see yourself as someone who already has, life rearranges to confirm that self-concept. Sleep allows this shift to occur without resistance because the conscious mind no longer interferes. Falling asleep in the wish fulfilled means you rest in the emotional aftertaste of accomplishment. It feels like relief. It feels like ease. It feels like the quiet satisfaction you experience when something important is settled and no longer needs your attention. You are not excited or anxious, you are at peace. This emotional tone is the signal the subconscious understands. It does not analyze words, it absorbs feeling. As you lie in stillness, you may gently imply to yourself that the desire is complete, not by repeating it endlessly, but by allowing the body to respond as if it were true. Notice how your shoulders drop when you feel safe. Notice how your breath slows when there is nothing left to worry about. These physical responses are evidence that the state is being entered. The body always follows belief. The wish fulfilled is not about visual clarity, it is about inner agreement. Some may see vivid images, others may feel only a subtle sense of knowing. Both are equally effective. The subconscious does not require pictures, it requires conviction. Conviction is not intensity, it is certainty. And certainty is most easily accessed when the mind is quiet and the body is relaxed. Sleep removes the need to figure out how. The moment you accept fulfillment internally, the how becomes irrelevant. The subconscious mind, which governs behavior, perception, and opportunity, begins to move you naturally toward the outcome. Ideas arise effortlessly. Actions feel inspired rather than forced. Encounters occur without planning. All of this unfolds because the inner state changed first. Many people delay entering the wish fulfilled because they believe they must wait for proof. But proof follows assumption, not the other way around. If you wait for evidence before you feel fulfilled, you are placing the creative order in reverse. The inner state is the cause, the outer experience is the effect. Sleep meditation restores the correct order by allowing you to assume first and observe later. As you practice falling asleep in fulfillment, you will notice a shift in how you relate to your desire during the day. The urgency fades, the obsession loosens. You are no longer checking constantly for signs. This detachment is not indifference, it is confidence. You do not constantly think about what you know is already secured. This relaxed attitude is a powerful indicator that the state has been accepted. Entering the wish fulfilled also means releasing your old story. You cannot carry the identity of someone who lacks while attempting to embody someone who has. Sleep is the moment when old narratives naturally dissolve. You are not reinforcing past disappointments or future fears. You are resting in a new assumption. Each night you do this, the new identity becomes more familiar and the old one loses its hold. The subconscious learns through repetition, but repetition does not mean effort. It means consistency. Night after night, as you drift into sleep with the same quiet acceptance, the assumption hardens into fact. What once felt imagined begins to feel normal. And what feels normal must eventually appear externally, because life reflects what you consider natural. You are not trying to make something happen while you sleep. You are allowing what is already decided to unfold. This is why sleep meditation is so effective. It removes the struggle. When effort ends, power begins. When you stop chasing, you start receiving. The wish fulfilled is not something you reach for. It is something you rest into. If doubts arise, you do not fight them. Fighting gives them energy. Instead, you return gently to the feeling of completion. You let the body soften again. You let the breath slow again. You let the mind drift. Doubt cannot survive in deep relaxation because doubt requires tension. Peace is the natural enemy of disbelief. Over time, falling asleep in fulfillment becomes effortless. You no longer need guidance. The state becomes your default. You fall asleep knowing rather than hoping. You wake up grounded rather than anxious. And life begins to echo this inner stability with external confirmation. The state of the wish fulfilled is not something you visit occasionally. It is something you learn to live from. Sleep is the training ground. Each night, you rehearse being the person who already has. Each night, you imprint the subconscious with completion. And each day, the world responds accordingly, quietly, naturally, inevitably. Nothing is forced. Nothing is rushed. The moment you enter the wish fulfilled, the seed is planted. Sleep waters it. Time allows it to grow. Your only responsibility is to return to that inner acceptance again and again, especially in the moments when the outer world seems unchanged. The inner decision has already been made, and what is accepted in consciousness must express itself in form. Releasing control is not weakness, it is mastery. The mind that tries to manage every outcome is the same mind that blocks the very thing it desires. Control is rooted in fear, fear that if you do not supervise the process, nothing will happen. But manifestation does not respond to supervision. It responds to surrender. Sleep is the natural state where surrender becomes effortless, and this is why it is the most powerful moment to impress the subconscious. The conscious mind is designed to analyze, judge, and protect. It asks how, when, and why. While these functions are useful during the day, they become obstacles at night. When you carry mental control into sleep, you remain tense, alert, and resistant. True rest does not begin until control is released, and only in true rest does the deeper mind step forward to do its work. Surrender does not mean giving up on your desire. It means trusting that the desire no longer requires your management. When you release control before sleep, you are not abandoning responsibility, you are transferring it to a higher level of intelligence within you. The subconscious knows how to arrange circumstances, shift perceptions, and guide behavior without strain. Your task is not to direct it, but to allow it. Many people believe they must keep thinking about their desire in order to make it happen. In reality, overthinking is a form of resistance. It signals that the desire is not yet trusted as real. The moment you trust something fully, you stop obsessing over it. Sleep meditation teaches you this trust by gently leading you away from mental effort and into bodily relaxation. As the body begins to soften, control naturally loosens. Muscles release, breathing deepens, the heart rate slows. These physical changes send a message to the nervous system that it is safe to let go. Safety is essential for surrender. You cannot release control if you feel threatened by uncertainty. That is why the first step is always relaxation, not affirmation. Letting go before sleep is an inner decision. It is the choice to stop monitoring progress, stop measuring time, and stop evaluating results. These habits belong to the conscious mind. The subconscious operates without clocks or comparisons. It responds only to impressions and assumptions. When you surrender control, you stop interrupting this process. One of the greatest illusions is the belief that effort equals effectiveness. In manifestation, effort often delays results. The more you push, the more you confirm that the outcome is missing. Surrender reverses this signal. It implies that nothing is missing and nothing needs to be fixed. This implication is absorbed by the subconscious and expressed through experience. Falling asleep in surrender means you are no longer rehearsing problems. You are no longer mentally preparing for disappointment. You are no longer scanning for obstacles. Instead, you are resting in neutrality or quiet confidence. This state is fertile ground for change because it is free of contradiction. Control is also tied to identity. If you see yourself as someone who must struggle, you will struggle. Releasing control requires releasing that identity. Sleep offers a temporary dissolution of identity, which allows a new one to form. As you drift into sleep, roles fade, labels dissolve. You are no longer the one who must make things happen. You are the one who allows things to unfold. This is why forcing visualization before sleep often backfires. The mind becomes active, tense, and alert. Instead of surrendering, it tries to perform. True surrender is effortless. It may include a simple acknowledgement such as, "This is handled," or "No longer need to think about this." These are not commands, they are permissions. When you surrender, you stop interfering with timing. The conscious mind is impatient because it sees only the present moment. The subconscious operates beyond immediate perception. It coordinates events across time and space. When you release control, you allow timing to align naturally, without pressure. Sleep is the great equalizer. No matter how strong the will, sleep eventually overrides it. This is why surrender is inevitable at night. The key is to surrender consciously before sleep takes over. When you do, you guide the direction of that surrender. You decide what assumption the subconscious will carry forward. As you let go, you may notice a sense of relief. This relief is not the result of success, it is the cause of it. Relief signals that the struggle has ended. And when struggle ends, flow begins. The subconscious moves most efficiently when it is not being watched or controlled. Many fear surrender because they associate it with loss. In truth, surrender is the gateway to gain. You do not lose your desire by letting go, you remove the resistance surrounding it. What you release is not the desire itself, but the tension around not having it. Falling asleep in surrender also trains trust. Each night you let go and nothing collapses, the mind learns that control was never necessary. This builds confidence in the process. Over time, surrender becomes your default response, not only at night but throughout the day. You begin to notice that things resolve themselves without your intervention. Conversations shift. Opportunities appear. Insights arise spontaneously. These are not coincidences, they are the results of a subconscious that is finally free to operate. The paradox of surrender is that it requires courage. It takes courage to stop trying. It takes courage to rest without guarantees. But this courage is rewarded with alignment. When you surrender, you align with the deeper intelligence that has always been guiding you. As sleep deepens, the conscious mind withdraws completely. What remains is the assumption you last impressed. If that assumption is one of trust, safety, and release, the subconscious continues to work from that foundation. You do not need to supervise it. You do not need to check on it. You do not need to remind it. The work continues while you sleep, precisely because you are no longer interfering. This is not passive, it is efficient. It is the difference between pushing a river and letting it carry you. Over time, surrender becomes synonymous with peace. And peace is not the absence of desire, it is the absence of resistance. When you fall asleep surrendered, you are not saying, I don't care. You are saying, I trust. And trust is the signal that allows the subconscious to deliver what the conscious mind could never force. The moment you stop trying to control the outcome, you become available to receive it. Sleep teaches this lesson nightly. Each time you surrender to it, you are reminded that life does not require your constant effort, only your alignment. Emotional alignment is the language of the subconscious. Thoughts may introduce an idea, but emotions give that idea weight, meaning, and permanence. When emotions are aligned with fulfillment, the subconscious accepts the experience as real, regardless of what the outer world currently shows. This is why emotional alignment matters more than visualization, words, or technique. Feeling is the signal that activates creation. To be emotionally aligned with fulfillment does not mean maintaining constant excitement or forced positivity. Fulfillment has a distinct emotional signature: calm satisfaction, quiet relief, and inner ease. It is the feeling you experience after something important has been resolved, when the tension drops and the mind no longer races. This emotional state tells the subconscious that the desire has already been met. Many people misunderstand emotional alignment and attempt to manufacture intense emotions. They try to feel overwhelming joy or exaggerated gratitude, believing that stronger feelings produce faster results. In truth, intensity often signals effort, and effort signals lack. The subconscious does not respond to emotional drama, it responds to emotional truth. The emotion of fulfillment is subtle, stable, and grounded. Sleep is the ideal environment for emotional alignment because the body naturally moves toward regulation and balance. As you relax, emotions settle into their baseline. When guided gently, this baseline can be shifted from tension to ease, from anticipation to completion. Falling asleep in emotional alignment is not about doing more, it is about removing what does not belong. Emotions are stored in the body as sensations. When a desire feels unfulfilled, the body often carries tightness, restlessness, or pressure. Emotional alignment begins by allowing these sensations to soften. As muscles release and breathing deepens, the emotional tone changes automatically. This is why physical relaxation is inseparable from emotional alignment. The subconscious does not differentiate between emotions caused by imagination and those caused by experience. It only registers the emotional state as real. When you rest in the emotions of fulfillment before sleep, the subconscious assumes the corresponding circumstances already exist. It then organizes perception, behavior, and opportunity to match that assumption. Emotional alignment also requires honesty. You cannot suppress frustration or fear and expect alignment to occur. Suppressed emotions remain active beneath the surface and continue to influence the subconscious. Instead of fighting these emotions, you allow them to be present and then allow them to dissolve through relaxation. Acceptance neutralizes resistance. As emotional alignment deepens, the desire stops feeling distant. It no longer feels like something you are reaching for. It feels integrated into your sense of self. This integration is crucial. The subconscious manifests what feels like me, not what feels like something I want. When fulfillment becomes part of your emotional identity, expression becomes inevitable. Falling asleep in emotional alignment also retrains your emotional habits. Most people go to sleep carrying the emotions of the day: stress, disappointment, anticipation, or worry. These emotions are then reinforced overnight. When you consciously choose emotional alignment before sleep, you interrupt this cycle and install a new emotional pattern. The repetition of emotional alignment night after night builds emotional familiarity. What once felt imagined begins to feel normal, and what feels normal no longer triggers doubt. Doubt arises only when something feels unfamiliar or inconsistent with identity. Emotional alignment removes this inconsistency. It is important to understand that emotions do not create by force, they create by resonance. The emotion you sustain becomes the emotional climate of your subconscious. Just as a climate determines what can grow, your emotional climate determines what can manifest. Fulfillment thrives in calm, not chaos. Gratitude is often misunderstood in this process. Gratitude is not a polite thank you directed at the future, it is a recognition of present sufficiency. True gratitude feels complete, not hopeful. When gratitude arises naturally from emotional alignment, it reinforces the assumption that nothing is missing. Sleep meditation gently guides emotional alignment by removing the need to explain or justify the feeling. You are not convincing yourself emotionally, you are allowing the emotion to emerge as the body relaxes. This makes the emotion sustainable rather than forced. Emotional alignment also influences the way you interpret events. When aligned with fulfillment, neutral situations are perceived as supportive rather than threatening. Delays feel temporary rather than permanent. Challenges feel navigable rather than overwhelming. These interpretations feed back into the subconscious and reinforce the fulfilled state. As you continue to fall asleep emotionally aligned, you may notice that your reactions during the day change. Triggers lose intensity. Patience increases. Confidence stabilizes. These changes are not conscious decisions, they are emotional recalibrations initiated at the subconscious level. It is also important to release emotional attachment to outcomes. Attachment creates emotional volatility, highs when hopeful, lows when disappointed. Emotional alignment is steady. It does not rise and fall with circumstances. This steadiness is what allows manifestation to unfold without interference. When emotional alignment is present, effort becomes unnecessary. You do not need to remind yourself of the desire or rehearse it mentally. The emotional state itself carries the assumption. The subconscious responds to this consistency by making the experience match. Before sleep, emotional alignment may feel like a soft landing. The body feels heavier. The mind feels quieter. There is a sense of safety. This safety is essential because the subconscious will not accept new assumptions in a state of threat. Emotional alignment signals that it is safe to change. Over time, emotional alignment becomes your default emotional posture. You begin to live from fulfillment rather than striving. This does not make you passive, it makes you precise. Actions arise from clarity rather than urgency. The emotional state you fall asleep in is the emotional state that shapes your future experiences. When that state is fulfillment, reality gradually reorganizes to reflect it. This process is subtle, cumulative, and inevitable. Emotional alignment is not about pretending everything is perfect. It is about choosing the emotional position of completion even when circumstances are still catching up. This choice is easiest to make at night, when the world is quiet and the mind is receptive. Each time you fall asleep emotionally aligned, you reinforce the truth that fulfillment is a state you enter, not a condition you wait for. And what is entered internally must, in time, be expressed externally. Reprogramming the subconscious does not happen through sudden effort or dramatic change. It happens through gentle, consistent repetition. The subconscious mind learns the same way it always has, through what is repeated often enough to feel familiar and safe. What feels familiar becomes normal, and what becomes normal is eventually expressed as reality. This is why repetition, especially in the relaxed state before sleep, is one of the most powerful tools for inner transformation. The subconscious does not argue, analyze, or question. It accepts. Whatever is impressed upon it repeatedly is taken as instruction. During the day, the conscious mind filters, resists, and corrects. At night, those filters dissolve. As the body relaxes and awareness softens, the subconscious becomes wide open. In this state, even subtle impressions carry immense weight. Many people misunderstand repetition and assume it must be forceful or excessive. They believe they must repeat affirmations aggressively or endlessly to override old patterns. In truth, force creates resistance, and resistance slows absorption. The subconscious responds best to repetition that is calm, rhythmic, and emotionally neutral or soothing. This is why repetition paired with relaxation is far more effective than repetition paired with effort. Every belief you currently hold was formed through repetition. You did not choose most of them consciously. They were absorbed through repeated experiences, repeated emotional reactions, and repeated inner dialogue. Reprogramming works the same way, but now the repetition is intentional. You are no longer leaving your inner programming to chance. Before sleep, the mind naturally enters a suggestible state. Brain activity slows, critical thinking fades, and imagination becomes dominant. In this state, repeated ideas bypass conscious scrutiny and settle directly into the subconscious. This is not hypnosis in the dramatic sense. It is a natural biological process that occurs every night. Soft affirmations work best because they do not activate resistance. Phrases that imply completion rather than struggle are easily accepted. The subconscious prefers implication over command. It absorbs suggestions that feel natural, not demanding. A calm inner statement repeated gently carries more power than an emotionally charged declaration repeated forcefully. Repetition does not mean monotony, it means consistency. Each night you return to the same assumption. Each night you reinforce the same inner conclusion. Over time, the repetition creates certainty. Certainty does not arrive suddenly, it builds quietly. One night alone may not feel transformative, but cumulative nights reshape identity. The subconscious is concerned with patterns, not single events. A single affirmation does not outweigh years of opposing repetition. But steady repetition, even if subtle, begins to tip the balance. The old patterns lose dominance as the new ones gain familiarity. Eventually, the new assumption feels more natural than the old belief ever did. Repetition also works through tone. The emotional tone that accompanies repeated thoughts determines how deeply they are absorbed. A calm tone signals safety. A tense tone signals threat. The subconscious resists change when it perceives threat, but it welcomes change when it feels safe. This is why repetition during sleep meditation is so effective. It occurs in a state of safety and rest. Another important aspect of repetition is timing. The last dominant impression before sleep often becomes the first assumption reinforced upon waking. When you fall asleep with the same assumption repeatedly, it carries over into waking awareness. You begin the day aligned rather than reactive. This continuity strengthens the programming. You may notice that after consistent repetition, thoughts begin to change automatically. Inner dialogue shifts without conscious effort. Old doubts arise less frequently, and when they do, they feel weaker. This is evidence that reprogramming is occurring. The subconscious is replacing old defaults with new ones. Repetition also alters emotional responses. Situations that once triggered anxiety or insecurity lose their intensity. This happens because the subconscious no longer interprets them through the old belief system. Emotional reactions are not chosen, they are conditioned. Change the conditioning, and emotional responses change naturally. It is important to allow repetition to be effortless. If you miss a night or feel distracted, nothing is ruined. The subconscious responds to overall patterns, not perfection. Consistency over time matters more than intensity in any single moment. Trust the process rather than monitoring it. Repetition works best when it aligns with identity. Statements that reflect who you are becoming are absorbed more easily than statements that feel foreign. Over time, repetition reshapes identity itself. You begin to see yourself differently, and this new self concept becomes the lens through which you interpret reality. Sleep repetition also works because it bypasses memory of effort. You do not remember trying while you sleep. You only remember the state you wake up in. This prevents the reinforcement of struggle. The subconscious receives the message without associating it with work or effort. As repetition continues, the subconscious stops treating the idea as a suggestion and starts treating it as fact. When this shift occurs, behavior changes naturally. You do not force new actions, they arise spontaneously. Opportunities are recognized without effort. Decisions feel clearer. This is not coincidence, it is alignment. Old beliefs do not disappear dramatically. They fade through disuse. When a new assumption is repeated consistently, the old one loses reinforcement. Over time, it dissolves quietly. There is no confrontation, no inner battle. The new pattern simply becomes dominant. Repetition also trains patience. The subconscious does not respond to urgency. Urgency implies lack. Repetition implies confidence. Each calm repetition says, "This is settled." That message carries authority because it is delivered without desperation. You may find that after enough repetition, you no longer need to repeat consciously. The assumption feels established. At that point, repetition becomes maintenance rather than installation. The new belief sustains itself through lived experience. Reprogramming through repetition is not about changing reality directly, it is about changing the inner reference point. Once the reference point shifts, reality follows automatically. This is why repetition is so powerful. It changes the source rather than the symptoms. Night after night, the subconscious absorbs what is repeated. It does not rush, but it does not forget. Every repetition adds weight. Every repetition strengthens familiarity. And familiarity becomes truth. The repetition you engage in before sleep determines what feels possible, what feels natural, and what feels inevitable. When repetition is aligned with fulfillment, the subconscious accepts fulfillment as its operating assumption. From that assumption, life rearranges itself without force, without strain, and without resistance. Trust is the final seal that completes the process. Without trust, every technique becomes fragile, every assumption feels temporary, and every desire remains conditional. Trust is not blind optimism, it is inner certainty. It is the calm decision that what has been accepted internally no longer requires supervision. When you rest in trust and completion, you stop reopening what has already been settled. Most people struggle not because they cannot imagine fulfillment, but because they revisit doubt after imagining it. They assume, then check. They feel fulfilled, then question. This back and forth weakens the impression. Trust ends this cycle. It is the decision to stop revisiting the question entirely. When something is truly trusted, it is mentally closed. You do not keep opening a door that has already been locked. Completion is a psychological state. It is the inner recognition that nothing more is required from you. No more affirming, no more visualizing, no more emotional effort. This does not mean you abandon awareness. It means awareness rests. The moment you decide something is complete, your nervous system relaxes. That relaxation is the signal the subconscious understands. Sleep is the ultimate expression of trust. You lie down and let consciousness fade, trusting that your body will breathe, your heart will beat, and you will awaken. You do not supervise sleep, you surrender to it. Manifestation works the same way. When you fall asleep in completion, you are telling the subconscious, this is handled. That message continues long after awareness dissolves. Trust also removes urgency. Urgency is always rooted in fear, fear that time is running out, fear that something may fail, fear that you might miss an opportunity. Completion dissolves urgency because there is nothing left to chase. What is complete does not require speed, it unfolds at its own pace. One of the most powerful shifts occurs when you stop looking for signs. Looking for signs implies uncertainty. Trust does not scan the environment for reassurance. It rests in knowing. The subconscious responds strongly to this knowing because it signals authority. Authority tells the subconscious that the assumption is final. Resting in completion also changes your relationship with time. Time no longer feels like an enemy. Delays no longer feel threatening. You understand intuitively that timing is part of the process, not a barrier to it. This understanding prevents emotional reactions that would otherwise reprogram doubt. Trust is built through consistency, not intensity. Each night you fall asleep without revisiting the desire, trust strengthens. Each morning you wake up without checking progress, completion deepens. Over time, the desire fades from conscious attention, not because it is forgotten, but because it is resolved internally. This fading is often misunderstood. People fear that if they stop thinking about the desire, it will stop manifesting. In truth, the opposite is true. Constant thinking keeps the desire in a state of becoming. Trust allows it to move into being. What you stop monitoring begins to move freely. Completion also requires releasing emotional bargaining. Bargaining sounds like, if I do this right, then it will happen. Trust says, it is already done. Bargaining keeps you in effort. Trust places you in authority. The subconscious responds to authority, not negotiation. As you rest in trust, your inner dialogue changes. Instead of asking when, how, or why, your mind becomes quieter. Silence replaces speculation. This silence is not emptiness, it is stability. And stability is fertile ground for manifestation. Another sign of completion is emotional neutrality. You are no longer emotionally charged about the outcome. This neutrality is often mistaken for indifference, but it is actually confidence. You are not emotionally invested in proving something that you already accept as true. Resting in completion also dissolves comparison. You stop measuring your progress against others. You stop questioning why someone else seems ahead. Comparison only exists when fulfillment feels uncertain. Trust eliminates the need to compare because your path no longer feels incomplete. When you trust, you also stop revising the assumption repeatedly. You do not keep adjusting the desire or redefining it out of fear. You let it stand as it is. This stability allows the subconscious to work without confusion. Sleep amplifies trust because it removes conscious interference. Once you fall asleep, the subconscious continues from the last accepted state. If that state is completion, the subconscious carries forward the assumption without contradiction. You are no longer interrupting the process with doubt or impatience. You may notice that as trust deepens, inspired action arises naturally. These actions do not feel urgent or forced. They feel obvious. They arise without internal debate. This is how alignment expresses itself quietly and efficiently. Trust also changes how you respond to setbacks. Instead of reacting emotionally, you remain grounded. You interpret setbacks as adjustments rather than failures. This interpretation protects the assumption and keeps the subconscious aligned with fulfillment. Completion is not something you wait to feel after the desire appears. It is something you choose before it appears. This choice is what allows the appearance to occur. The inner state always precedes the outer expression. Resting in completion does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop doubting. Caring without doubt feels peaceful. It does not drain energy. It does not create tension. It simply exists. As nights pass and trust becomes natural, you may forget when you started. This is a sign that the desire is no longer central to your identity. It has moved from something I want to something that is, and what is no longer needs attention. The subconscious completes what the conscious mind releases. Every time you fall asleep without reopening the question, you strengthen the instruction. The instruction is not spoken, it is implied through rest. Rest is the final affirmation. Eventually, trust becomes your default state, not just for one desire, but for life itself. You stop trying to manage outcomes. You stop bracing for disappointment. You move through the world with quiet certainty. Completion is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It feels like peace. And peace is the clearest signal you can send to the subconscious that the work is finished. When the work is finished internally, the results follow externally, naturally, and without effort.